Hello and welcome to Analyzing Finance with Nick. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about loose monetary policy versus tight monetary policy and what are the consequences of each and why certain groups of individuals in society prefer certain environments for their monetary policy. I got this idea from a comment in one of my YouTube shorts. Let me know if you like some of the shorts that I do, and if you have some things that are more answerable and quick takes, I may do more of them. But when it comes to what the comment was, he referred to the Cross of Gold speech from William Jennings Bryan, who, if you guys don't know, he's a four-time Democratic candidate for president who ran on getting rid of the gold standard and having bimetals, and mainly because silver was the exchange rate was artificially weak relative to gold, and so that would allow for more inflation. And a lot of farmers wanted more inflation because the increasing efficiency of the second industrial revolution brought down food prices, which deflated faster than wages did and other goods and services, yet they were paying fixed interest rates. And so a lot of farmers got in trouble because they weren't able to pay their debts or had a harder time paying back their debts on their farms. And so there was the populist movement rose as a result because they wanted inflation to reduce the real burden of debt. And that is generally the people who tend to be pro-inflation and pro-easy money are debtors or people who sympathize with debtors. The biggest debtor of them all, as most of you guys watching know, are sovereign governments, particularly in developed countries. Japan has the highest debt to GDP in the world, followed by Greece, Italy, and are the top three, and then the United States and the UK are not too far behind on that dismal statistic. And so you can see why governments, despite what they claim to placate voters, would be fans of inflation, because they need inflation to be higher than the growth of their deficit spending in order to depreciate the real value of their sovereign debt. I mean, historically, there was a study done by Kenneth Rogoff and Reinhardt about the level of government debt to GDP where a government is on the fast track or slow track to default and can't really turn back. That historic level is about 90% to GDP, and most of the time once you get there, you eventually face a fiscal crisis. But now our central banks have responded through using financial repression to hold interest rates down below the rates of inflation to help alleviate this debt. The combination of just an overall strongly growing economy and financial repression can get you out of it. The example would be Great Britain after the Napoleonic Wars, which saw its debt to GDP ratio plummet due to that virtuous combination I told you about. Will it work for pretty much every developed country in the 21st century? Who knows? But the point I'm just trying to make is that the governments are the biggest beneficiaries of weak dollar/easy money policies. The other beneficiaries are generally a lot of the poor in most countries, either because they are net debtors and so would benefit from that, or a lot of the lower end wages actually tend to catch up the most to inflation compared to higher on the wage scale, particularly middle class jobs, or these people were on social benefits anyway, so the fact that which are indexed to inflation, so the cost of living increase doesn't hurt the very poor as badly. However, if you're like the working poor, middle class, or the upper middle class, and savers in general tend to lose the most from inflation because the cost of living without social assistance, usually during inflationary periods, grows faster than wages. So these people get squeezed. Anybody who's saving money gets squeezed because they don't get any interest in the bank, or interest that's lower than the inflation rate. So on the net, you're losing money. And so you basically got to be a professional speculator or invest way further out in the risk curve than you feel comfortable with to get the same kind of returns. That's why you're seeing previously safer investors such as retirees and pension funds allocating to levered equity strategies now, which they did not do 20 years ago when you had a positive real interest rate. It's because of the savers are being heavily punished by this type of monetary policy. A tighter monetary policy would benefit savers on the net, and it would. The other beneficiary indirectly is my own industry, the financial services industry, from a weak dollar policy. Why? It's because you have that with inflation higher than interest than we can get in the bank. Your customer base has more pressure to invest, and so who are they going to hire? They're going to hire financial advisors or trade more on discount brokerage firms or be more involved in the capital markets, and that need to catch up. So Wall Street / the financial industry benefits from weak dollar policies. Also exporters do, because if your costs are fixed in US dollars but the dollar weakens, so your foreign buyers can pay with a stronger currency, you benefit. It's like a way that you're able to cut the wages of your staff without actually having to do it. That's really what most devaluations are effectively doing. It's giving a pay cut to your population without them knowing what they're doing. And if you look at it that way, the winners and losers of the import-export beggar-thy-neighbor policies become a lot more clear. And then the other losers, again, are international tourists. Like if you travel and it costs you a lot more to go to another country because your currency's weaker. Yeah, and if you're in a country with a real bad history of inflation, like Argentina or Turkey, for example, it just makes it hard really to do any sort of business or import, or you have to do all of your transactions dollarized and store your money overseas. So really it's a battle, effectively, the strong dollar / tight monetary policy versus the weak dollar loose monetary policy between debtors, exporters, and governments, really, versus savers and net importers. If you have a country with a strong middle class, you would have a net benefit from tight monetary policies. You'd have more net savers than borrowers. However, due to a lot of structural issues, the middle class in most Western countries is not what it used to be. So the calculus might have changed so that now more people would benefit net from a weak dollar policy. Let me know what your thoughts are on that. Personally, my bias is probably towards the strong dollar policy, because I think that if you have a society that rewards saving, that encourages a lot of other virtuous behavior, both economically and socially, and the fact that you are not getting paid in the medium term for a time value of money causes a lot of moral hazards and negative economic incentives. But at the same time, there's a lot of people out there who are struggling with a lot of debt, and our governments who are struggling with a lot of debt and feel differently than about me, which is why weak dollar / easy monetary policies have really prevailed across the world since the 2008 financial crisis. I have a video that goes into more of this called Compensation Theory, which I'll be releasing in the next few weeks. And so if you want to know more about that, stay tuned. Thanks for watching, and have a good day. And as a disclaimer, nothing that I'm talking about on this is investment advice. Please do your own research before making any trades. Have a good night.